Fang Shan, often called Lubu, starts our tale with a shocking act. He kills his own godfather. As he utters an apology, he implies his godfather's death was crucial for his ascent to power. Lubu doesn't stop there, though. To prevent any future vendettas, he takes out all of his godfather's close associates. When he fills in the chief counselor about all that's happened, the counselor not only approves but also rewards Lubu with the Fang Tian Halbert, a legendary horse named Chi Tu, and even takes on the role of Lubu's godfather. Lubu then sweeps through battle after battle, claiming victory each time. But his winning streak ends abruptly when he's betrayed and arrested by his newfound godfather. He's taken before a gathering of generals and without much ceremony is killed. But his story doesn't end there. Upon death, Lubu awakens in a strange realm, a binary space, and hears a voice declaring he's forever doomed to be a loser. Just as suddenly, he finds himself back in the past, a day prior to the Battle of Sishui, with a headache from that haunting voice. He runs into Ho Chang, a feudal lord, who posits that perhaps Lubu is destined for leadership, which could explain the voices. Lubu laughs at this, noting the voice labeled him a failure, not a ruler. Their conversation is interrupted by a horseman, Hujin, who's angered by Lubu's casual demeanor amidst looming danger. Hujin, feeling his authority is being challenged, warns Lubu of dire consequences. In response, Lubu and his men draw their weapons, reminding Hujin that those who have threatened him in the past now rest in their graves. Just as tensions peak, another rider, Huashan, intervenes. He suggests focusing on their true enemies rather than infighting. Lubu jests that while it'd have been an opportune day for rebellion, his adversaries are simply too cowardly. The banter continues as they march towards Sishui. Lubu comically instructs his men to laugh at Hujin whenever they spot him. Later that evening at Sishui Pass, Hujin reveals to the gathered assembly that their opponent, Sun Jian, has a formidable army of 50,000, while at their side, the Siliang army boasts 150,000. An advisor named Zhao Sen flatters Hujin, claiming they could easily overpower Sun Jian given their numbers. Lubu, not one to hold his tongue, berates Hujin for his inexperience and incompetence. This earns him the sharp end of Huashin's spear. Yet Lubu remains undeterred, cautioning them to not underestimate Sun Jian. In response to Hujin's challenge to devise a strategy, Lubu proposes sending scouts to inspect Sun Jian's camp setup, ensuring they aren't walking into a trap, while the bulk of their forces would launch a direct assault. Lubu, having had enough of Hujin's arrogance about easily besting Sun Jian with sheer numbers and feeling that such tactics would tarnish his reputation, makes a bold declaration. He won't let his Bing army participate in a full-blown war. Instead, Hujin can march into what Lubu believes will be his doom. With Lubu preparing his soldiers for a night raid on Sun Jian's main camp, Weisha relays news that Hujin has already led his forces into battle. Unperturbed, Lubu instructs his soldiers to rest easy, confident in his belief that Hujin's recklessness will cost him his life. But as Lubu slumbers, a haunting voice revisits him, proclaiming his fate a failure. He's whisked away into a digital realm, confronted by a 4D life simulator system that promises a life filled with endless possibilities. Apparently, a glitch casts the system into this 3D space. It tempts Lubu, stay and reshape his life or return to his reality. Curiosity wins, and Lubu selects to dive into the simulation. Instantly, the scene shifts to a house in the Han Dynasty. Lubu reincarnates as a baby. By age 7, he's dealing with local bullies who taunt him, calling him a human-skinned monster. Despite a rough confrontation that leaves him worse for wear, a system screen pops up, revealing he's in a farmer simulation and has only earned a meager reputation point from the brawl. Lubu discerns that he can change his status through significant feats, and he's still wrestling with whether this life is genuine or merely a dream. Given his impoverished circumstances, Lubu decides mastering martial arts might increase his status. As he dives into rigorous training, his father berates him for neglecting familial duties, especially since their already struggling household can't support Lubu's newfound food-consuming regimen. Lubu, who recalls from his past life effortlessly lifting thrice the weight he currently struggles with, laments his current weakness. But time moves on, and Lubu finds solace in the little victories, like increasing his strength by chopping wood. When Lubu turns 9, joy and hardship collide. He gains a baby sister. However, overhearing his father considering selling her due to the age-old belief that raising girls is a burden, Lubu vehemently protests. Vowing to consume less and even work extra, Lubu tries to ensure she isn't sold off. This stubborn determination isn't for naught. His intellect grows, aiding him in persuading his father to keep the family whole. From then on, Lubu, who never farmed in his previous life, toils every day, slowly learning the art of agriculture. Lubu quickly took to farming. As he dug his hands into the soil, he began predicting the weather, choosing fertilizers based on land conditions, and even transformed 2 acres of barren family land into fertile grounds. The villagers couldn't help but chatter. The Lu family's worst plot had now become rich soil, all thanks to Lubu. His reputation in the village jumped up a notch, but to him, it felt minimal. He pondered over the flourishing land and wondered why his wealth hadn't seen a similar increase. Approaching his father, Lubu raised a burning question. Why doesn't the chief pay taxes? His father shed light on the grim reality. The chief squeezed every coin out of the village's impoverished residents. That's the very reason their lives were perpetually tight, scraping biannually. This chief, as Lubu learned, not only reaped the benefits without working for them, but also double-dipped, collecting taxes for himself and the government. The chief's grip was so firm that if Lubu's family didn't hand over a chunk of their harvest, there was a lurking threat. His mother and sister could be claimed as tax. This ignited fury in Lubu. He thought, is there no hope for hardworking farmers like us? Frustration built up, and he made an inner vow. Even if he didn't reclaim his past glory as a general, he wouldn't let anyone walk over him or his family. A few years whizzed by, and Lubu, now 12, showcased his budding archery skills. An arrow, released with precision, took down a sprinting rabbit. But as Lubu tried to store his prize, he was met with a new obstacle, Lu Hong, the village chief. He wanted a tax on Lubu's hunted goods, claiming orders from the imperial court. Lubu's temper flared. Why would the imperial court interfere in commoners' daily life? This retort riled up the chief, who saw it as a rebellious stance, threatening Lubu and his family's safety. As tension escalated, Lubu's father intervened, urging his son to part with half the hunt. Yet Lubu's rage bubbled over. Drawing close to the chief, Lubu brandished his knife, giving the illusion of attacking him. In truth, he slaughtered another rabbit, staging it to intimidate the chief. Fear struck, Lubu warned the chief against future harassment, but the confrontation took a toll. His father was furious, scolding Lubu for jeopardizing their hard-earned stability. Lubu's argument was that showing weakness would only embolden the chief, suggesting they could even overthrow him and distribute his lands to the villagers. As tempers flared, his father's patience snapped, and he gave Lubu a resounding slap, deciding they'd abandon their home for safety. But then tragedy. Cries alerted them to their house ablaze with Lubu's mother and sister trapped inside. In the chaotic aftermath, father and son, already emotionally torn, had to endure bystanders' cold remarks, saying they got what they deserved. The ashes of their life smoldered in front of them, a testimony to the heavy price of defiance. The voices ringing in the air were those of the villagers, mocking and ridiculing the Lu family. The words were laced with derision for daring to challenge the chief. Lubu's fury surged like a beast breaking free from its cage, and he couldn't control the wild anger coursing through his veins. He grabbed his bow, seeing the villagers as murderers deserving death. But his father, panic-stricken, pleaded with him to stop. "You've already destroyed our house. Don't lose yourself to this madness," he cried. Lubu's eyes were aflame, his face contorted with rage. He snarled back at his father, "Shut up. I'll handle this my way." His father's heart sank, for he no longer saw his son in front of him, but a monster driven by unbridled rage. Without hesitation, Lubu shot an arrow at one of the villagers who had just slandered their family, watching as the man collapsed lifelessly. He was reminded of how his mother had loved him, a warmth he never knew in his previous life. The memories fueled his anger, and he aimed at the fleeing crowd, his arrows finding their mark again and again. Each kill seemed to erode his humanity, the monster within gaining a tighter grip. Images of his little sister, a reflection of an innocent daughter from his past life, flashed in his mind, only to shatter with each arrow's release. One arrow lodged in the leg of a bully, who then fell, screaming in agony. Approaching the wounded man, Lubu listened as the truth spilled from his lips. It was the chief's doing, the order to set the fire. The admission did nothing to quell Lubu's wrath. With a swift swing of his knife, he ended the man's life, blood gushing from a fatal wound. Revenge clouded Lubu's thoughts as he stalked towards the village, leaving a trail of corpses behind. Fear spread like wildfire among the villagers. Some fled, others bravely faced him, but all felt they were confronting a monstrous entity, not a mere child. A gruesome battle ensued, Lubu slashing throats, showing no remorse or mercy. When his blade dulled from the relentless bloodshed, he reverted to his arrows, piercing 2 more villagers. Finally, only one man stood defiant, cursing Lubu and his family. In response, Lubu inflicted a slow, agonizing death. The village fell into an eerie silence, save for Lubu's footsteps and the fresh dead he left in his wake. His final destination loomed ahead, the house of Chief Lu Han. As he entered, memories of his warning to the chief played in his head, a grim prophecy now fulfilled. He had slaughtered the chief's entire family, sparing neither child nor woman. The chief, trembling in terror, fell to his knees, begging for mercy, but Lubu's only response was a cold farewell before slashing the chief's throat. A system message appeared, notifying Lubu of a 15-point increase in reputation, but his intellect had dropped to 0, consumed by revenge. He then set the village aflame, mirroring the devastation wrought upon his home. Meanwhile, his father was consumed by guilt, lamenting that he had raised a monster, blaming himself for the deaths of his wife and daughter. Lubu, somber and silent, approached his father, dropping to his knees. His father urged him to flee, as the surviving villagers would surely report the massacre. Tears welled in Lubu's eyes as he begged his father to leave with him, but his father's voice was filled with weary resignation. He spoke of his wife and daughter's labor, their lost opportunities for joy, and the life they never got to enjoy. The weight of their absence pressed down on Lubu's father. Feeling he needed to join them in whatever lay beyond, he yelled at Lubu, pleading for him to flee the scene. In a gesture of deep reverence, Lubu touched his forehead to the ground, honoring his father's command. As he began to retreat, he heard the all-too-distinct sound of his father's life ending. Though he knew the gravity of what his father had done, Lubu forced himself to keep moving, tears streaming down his face. Embracing his father's final directive, he broke into a run. Hours or perhaps moments later, Lubu found shelter in an old deer-licked building. There he lit a fire, his thoughts consumed by the recent horrors. Come dawn, guards approached the location, noticing the remnants of a recently quelled fire. They immediately concluded that Lubu, the infamous village butcher, was nearby. They scoured the surrounding buildings, yet unbeknownst to them, Lubu was perched on a rooftop, bow at the ready. Without hesitation, he loosed an arrow that found its mark in a guard's neck. The fallen guard's comrade tried to alert the rest, but before he could convey Lubu's position, another arrow pierced his chest. Chaos ensued as another guard spotted Lubu on the rooftop, shouting out his position. That guard tried to counter Lubu with his own arrow, but Lubu deftly sidestepped it and retaliated, injuring the guard. The wounded guard warned his brethren of Lubu's uncanny archery prowess, urging caution. Seeking a better vantage point, some guards took to the rooftops. In response, Lubu descended and dashed into the nearby forest. Inside, the guards chattered about an incoming storm and the need to apprehend Lubu before the weather turned. Lubu, hidden on a treetop, let an arrow fly. It met its target, prompting return fire. He dodged the onslaught with nimble leaps and launched himself from the tree, his landing cushioned by another successful shot. One of the guards sneered at Lubu's tenacity, comparing him to a pesky cockroach. Realizing they were outmatched, the guard used a unique whistle arrow to signal for backup. The sharp whistle reverberated through the forest, and Lubu, recognizing the call for reinforcements, felt the walls closing in on him. Suddenly, an arrow whizzed past him. Startled, Lubu realized that they had him cornered. A quick glance revealed 2 guards poised on a tree, arrows nocked. Then the skies opened, pouring rain that drenched everything. The guards took this as an advantage, letting loose more arrows. Lubu tried to gather his waning strength, determined not to go down without a fight. Despite being outnumbered and surrounded, he lunged at his adversaries, defiantly screaming. Yet before he could reach them, another volley brought him to his knees. The guards circled him, launching arrow after arrow until Lubu could no longer move. The head guard surveying the scene coldly informed Lubu that he was bound for execution. When asked if he harbored any regrets, a bloody Lubu spat back, defiant to the end, affirming that he'd made his choice and would stand by it until his last breath. The guard shook his head, expressing that it was such a shame. He mused that if Lubu had shown this tenacity at the country's border, he might have achieved monumental things and brought immense pride to his lineage. The guard leader unsheathed a sharp blade, wishing Lubu a more peaceful existence in his next life, and with a swift motion, separated Lubu's head from his body. As Lubu's detached head lay on the ground, lingering thoughts filled his mind. Was this really inevitable? Could different choices have changed his fate? Suddenly, his eyes fluttered open, revealing an unfamiliar space known as the system space. In this place, Lubu was whole again. The system chimed in, congratulating him on successfully navigating his first simulation. As it began computing his performance, a flurry of thoughts consumed Lubu. Was he still alive? The system relayed his actions back to him. His act of annihilating the entire Louvre village earned him notoriety on the path of crime, which landed him a final rank of level 1. His untimely death meant he couldn't escalate his crimes, hence a single point. However, his defiant spirit inspired future generations, granting him 15 reputation points. His tumultuous life meant 0 wealth points. His hunting days gave him a nimble physique, boosting his power score to 10. But his reliance on brute force over brains gave him an intellect score of 0. His end result? A C grade. After tallying his scores, the system awarded him 28 simulation credits and a choice of 3 bonuses: basic carpentry skills, tailoring abilities, or foundational heart enhancement. Lubu opted for the heart enhancement. He soon felt a rush, an invigorating sensation around his heart. When next his eyes opened, he was back in his bed in reality. Lubu quickly inquired with Wei Shu, his wife's brother, about the commotion outside. Wei Shu explained that Hujin had taken General Huashan for a surprise raid on Sun Jian's primary encampment. To Lubu's astonishment, only minutes had elapsed in the real world, though he felt he'd spent 13 years in the simulation. Springing to action, he ordered Wei Shu to rally their troops. Wei Shu, a bit confused, mentioned that Lubu had previously instructed the soldiers to stand down. Lubu, however, was resolute, saying they were about to shift history's trajectory. Meanwhile, Hujin's forces were strategizing near Sun Jian's camp. Huaqianong informed Hujian that Sun Jian's troops appeared relaxed and off guard. Delighted by this intel, Hujian laid out his plan. Huaqianong would ambush Sun Jian's camp from a side entrance, while Hujin would seal off the main gate. He smugly noted that since Lubu was still seemingly resting, the victory's accolades would be his alone. Huaqianong approached the side entrance with his platoon, sensing something amiss due to the eerie quiet. He couldn't back out now. Resolutely, he signaled his men to charge. Sun Jian's sentry spotted them, raising the alarm. One guard rushed to sound the drums, but a flurry of arrows cut him down, successfully neutralizing the guards. Huaqianong began his infiltration. Amid the torchlit camp, Huaqianong and his platoon sensed something amiss. There wasn't much pushback, and it felt too easy. Suddenly, a soldier reported that the camp appeared empty. Realizing they had walked right into a trap, Huaqianong yelled for his men to pull back. But they were a moment too late. A flurry of flaming arrows came hurtling down, igniting the camp. The structures, already doused in oil, burst into flames. Huaqianong rallied his troops, reminding them that their leader, Hujian, was nearby guarding the main gate. From his vantage point, Hujian witnessed the blazing inferno. His soldiers urged him to assist Huaqianong, but sensing the unfavorable tides, Hujian ordered a hasty retreat. Instead of a coordinated pullback, it was every man for himself. As Hujian fled, Sun Jian's concealed forces sprang from the forest, boxing in Hujian's unprepared men. Hujian might have felt a momentary relief escaping the immediate battleground, but his heart raced as General Zhu Derong of Sun Jian's army shouted his name, charging at him. With Zhu's horse outpacing his own, Hujian braced for combat. Their swords met in fierce combat, each parry matching the other. The clang of steel echoed as neither gained the upper hand. After a particularly forceful swing from Zhu, Hujian, out of breath, admitted he was out of practice. Instead of further engagement, Hujian turned tail, leading Zhu on a chase. Back at the besieged camp, General Huaqianong managed to regroup with the remaining forces. But it was far from a favorable position, being encircled by Sun Jian's formidable troops. Learning that Hujian had fled at the first sign of trouble, the mood soured even more. But suddenly, they heard Hujian's voice crying out, desperately seeking help from the advancing Zhu. Seeing his quarry near capture, Zhu lunged at Hujian, sword aimed for a killing blow. But a swift motion intercepted him. It was too late when he recognized the deadly arc of Huaqianong's halberd. The general's head was sent soaring, landing a distance away. Hujian, catching his breath, mockingly chided the fallen Zhu for his foolish pursuit. Believing they had a moment's respite, Hujian and Huaqianong contemplated their next move. Hujian, paranoid, pondered if Lubu might have betrayed their plans. However, any further thoughts were cut short by the thundering approach of Sun Jian and his men.